Hello and welcome. This is part one of a series of tutorials on OData and how it is used inside the SAP mobile platform to create applications. In this session, we'll try to understand the OData standard and how it works. We'll try to get behind the OData protocol to see what it comprises of. We'll try to see how SAP leverages the OData and how it is used in the different products like the SAP NetWeaver Gateway. OData is the short form for Open Data Protocol. It is a data access protocol from Microsoft released under open specification. So most of the Microsoft products like the Microsoft Azure, Microsoft SharePoint, they are kind of data producers. So for the data producers to have an uniform way of representing data, Microsoft came up with this specification, which is the OData. Now, there are a lot of players behind the OData consortium, SAP being one of them. So SAP products like NetWeaver is there. Then there are other producers like eBay or Netflix and even IBM. So there are a lot of industry support behind the standard. So OData is based upon the REST-based architectures. So REST is a way of representing resources through URIs or uniform resource indicators. So you would be able to operate on resources by using HTTP verbs like the get, put, post, and delete. And OData follows the same standard. The crux of the OData protocol is built on top of the atom. So the atom structure is the envelope that contains the data returned from each OData request. So atom was created for a web-based syndication similar to RSS. It's all XML based. So for more details on OData, you could visit www.odata.org. We will get into that site in a few minutes. OData is also known as the ODBC for the web, for the uniqueness or the uniformity of data access. We'll start looking at the contents or the way an OData request is framed. So to retrieve an entity, you basically follow something called an URL scheme. The URL scheme as shown in the figure could be broken down into two or multiple areas. The first is the service root URI. So any request that or any service that is producing OData needs to specify the root URI. So the services.odata.org / odata.svc is the service root URI for some OData service. Then within that OData service, you could also specify the resources. So in this case, there are two resources. One is a category and the second one is the products. So the category one is the first resource, and under category you have a products. Then following the resource path, you could specify the query options. Query options are a way to tell the OData service to return a particular entity or order a particular data. So we will get into more details on that later during the session. So I have displayed some of these OData query filters. This is by no means comprehensive. You could get more details by visiting the odata.org. So what essentially the purpose of the slide is to explain what are the different kind of operations that are possible with OData. So OData behaves in some ways like the SQL queries. So to get a product table from a database, you will probably create a SQL query. Like select start from products where the product price is less than or greater than some amount. So the same could be accomplished by OData. Now we'll start moving to some exercises to see how this could be used against some common web service. So if you go to the odata.org, there is an ecosystem of producers and consumers. So you could see in the ecosystem by this URL odata.org/ecosystem, there are a lot of consumers. Consumers are the clients. They would be able to interpret OData and display it in some format. So the browser, here I am using a Chrome web browser. Chrome browser could also interpret the OData and show in some format. Similarly, Firefox is another browser that could be used. Even Internet Explorer also supports it. So there are a lot of applications also being also producing OData here. SharePoint 2010, IBM WebSphere, everything produces an OData style interface. For testing, there are some open services available, like from Netflix. You could get a catalog of all the Netflix videos from a Netflix website. I'm going to use a particular web service for some testing. This is the OData test web service. The URL is services.odata.org/odata/odata.service. So if you point your browser to this URL, it returns all the resources available. So as you can relate to the SQL tables, there are three different kinds of tables here: products, categories, and suppliers. So that's the main part of it. OData also provides a rich metadata of the data source. With a $metadata query, it's possible to see the full structure of the data available from a given data service. So let's start by that and adding a dollar tag and a $metadata. Okay. As you can see, this provides a rich representation of all the different schemas for that particular database. Let's start with the top. So the document returned from the OData metadata operation is defined by something called the entity data model specification. So that's what you see here, EDMX. EDMX is entity data model specification. So that is the base tag. So it tells the specification describes how to interpret the result of the metadata operation. So there are links available. So for example, a product, if the product has a list of children, that also could be represented within this schema. And similarly, categories and list of categories, that's also possible. So let's take one example, which is the category. So the category, it has a property reference named ID. This is the unique key, and that key, what is the type of the key is also described here. So this is like an integer, 32-bit integer, and there is a navigation property which tells the relationship between the category and products. So it's a rich representation of the relationships. Now we'll try to invoke few operations and see how you can navigate through the data. So as I showed in the previous URL, so you have the root URL. This is the service URI, and the service URI is giving the list of resources. Let's start with the resource products. So you could go into products, and it lists down all the products available from that service. So there are multiple, like you have product 0, product 1, there are like n number of products. So if you want to run a filter against the total number of products, so you're looking for products whose price is greater than or equal to 2. So you could use what is called a filter query. So you could do a filter, and this is returning all the products whose price is greater than or equal to 2. Similarly, you could also run additional queries. So I have a few queries here. So I want to get the top 5 products, similar to the top query in SQL. So I can go there, I can execute a query, give the $top 5. This gives top 5 results. So instead of getting all the results of the product, you can get the top 5 product requests. And you can also do other queries like you order by description. You can do that. So I want to get the top 5 and order by the name and description. So there is like you can see there is a summary is also available. Mix of flavors. Products are arranged by description. So this was just an example to give you an overview of the possibilities with the OData. And this exercise is not intended to be going into details of the OData, but it's just giving you pointers on how to go and look at the OData documents and look at the ecosystem and find out how you can leverage OData in your application. Now we will switch tracks. We will switch tracks to see how OData is used within an SAP platform. So the structure of the OData document, we looked at it. OData can be used to access table-like structures much the same way as the ODBC. So here what we are going to do, we are going to take a look at one of the gateway samples, which is the flight and flight connection sample. And we will try to understand how the gateway is producing this OData style document. For that, we will navigate the gateway. So you should have a gateway system available for you to see the OData service. Um, Within the OData, you can look at the activate and maintain services. So double clicking on that gives you a service catalog of all the services exposed by the NetWeaver gateway. So as you can see, there are few services available. I'm going to make use of this RMPP sample flight. If you select on a particular service in the service browser, it will tell you what kind of mode it is using. If it's an OData mode or a standard mode, you should be seeing that the service is active within the console. This is the standard mode of operation. To test out this service, the gateway provides a call browser facility, and clicking on this button, call browser, it will invoke the default browser in your machine and give you the content. You have to give permission for the invocation. It will ask you the username and password for the gateway. So this should be given to you. So once you click on that, it provides all the information. So you can see it is very similar to the other one we looked at for the products. This gives a list of booking collection, carrier collection, travel agency. So what SAP has done is SAP has provided specific extensions to the OData. So you would be able to see some SAP specific tags within the Atom specification here. You could also get the format in a different way also. You could, if you want to get a JSON format, you would put a prefix of JSON to the format, and that will give you a kind of a JavaScript array kind of notation. So that's also another way. So we could get a metadata information. So the metadata is a really useful way of trying to find out all the details of the product. So we have seen it. Now I'm going to start using the Chrome browser. This is a Firefox browser, but you could also use the Chrome browser. Chrome gives a little bit better look and feel. So we'll just switch back to the Chrome browser, and we saw the same services. So one thing to note is that look at the URL. The URL, the service root URI here. This is given by the gateway. So SAP dev.sybase.com is the server, and then it is giving the path to the sample flight URL. Now we look at the flight collection. For looking at the flight collection, you will go there and append flight collection. So it makes a query against the backend, and it will return all the flights which are in the database. So as you can see, the list is pretty huge. So it let's take one particular example and delve a little bit more detail. So let's take the case of this flight. So the carrier, it has some properties. The flight, like the flight entry is there. There is the flight details, the country, city, airport. These are all correspond to the tables in the database for that the flight. Now, if you are looking for some specific flight, you could always do filters, like in the previous example. So I am in this case, I have a few filters. So I'm looking for a flight by like flight which is arriving to the SFO airport, I could say filter, and there is a field called airport 2, and you can use the equal. And if I do the filter, you could see it gives a list of all the flights which are from SF airport. Okay. We will also execute some other filters. Let's see. I want to look at flights which are from American Airlines. So I'll go to flight collection, and now I filtered by the carrier ID, which is American Airlines. One thing to note here is that the Chrome browser, it appends the some signs. So the space is replaced by the percentage 20 sign, which is normal. The result, you can see that it is giving you all the flights which belong to American Airlines. Now, if I'm looking for a particular flight, I can also do that. So in this case, my filter I have pre-built is I want a flight which is arriving on 26 2012. So I could do that. I could use that filter in here. I could do that filter, so in here, this query has two operations. One is I'm getting two properties and doing an AND operation, so which is the property of the flight date and the carrier ID. So I could run that operation. You can see it returned me one request. Now this is an XML document. So there are different ways of parsing this XML document. You could use any standard parser to parse the document, or SAP also has the OData parsers, part of our libraries, and it will really help you in building a data object right from the XML document, and you could use that object directly in your mobile applications. Um, we will start looking at those in the next example to follow. Um, so let's switch back to our presentation mode. So in the next lesson, we will look at how to use the SAP, how to use the OData within the SAP mobile platform. How would you make that request from an application? And we'll try to start building an application. Thank you.